Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matan, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode number 254 of Something Else. Feast your hair holes in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 76 from December 17th, 2003. My name is Aria, and joining me as always is the Johnny Parisi to my Irish Pat Kenny. It's Cindy. Cindy, it's our last show of the year. How the hell you doing today?
Thank God. Sooner we get out of this year, the better.
No comment on the Johnny Parisi comment?
Did anybody even watch Heat around that time?
That was when they were still on USA, so it probably was doing like 500,000 people. The funny thing is, like, the story that came out that like Triple H had no idea who the hell he was and wondering why this guy was backstage, and it became like this running joke for a while, kind of like Shawn Michaels not knowing who Mike Knox was and legitimately having no idea why he'd be in a match with him on a pay-per-view.
Well, I guess nobody watched ECW either.
No, and more people watched ECW than in 2006 and watched Heat in 2005. As sad as that sounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, TNA is taking 2 weeks off of live pay-per-views, so are we. Unless Cindy wants to sit around and talk to herself about the best of the X Division on the 24th and the best of TNA 2003 on the 31st, we are wiping our hands clean and jumping into 2004 on January 7th. Now, there's no truth to the rumor
I'm not
that
doing
best of 2000
recaps. I'm not doing the recap shows.
There's no truth to the rumor that best of 2003 episode is just a blank tape.
No, they probably have stuff like I'm still here.
Okay. I got a pop-up on my screen, so I didn't know if you disappeared or not.
It's funny. Probably what's probably on that X Division or the best of 2003 is probably like the first Ultimate X, the AMW Triple X cage match.
Look, because the first Ultimate X match would be on the X Division show. Because, like, you take out, the X Division matches, you're not getting, you don't really have a stellar group of matches to put on that best of 2003 show. And the issue is, too, it's like they just did that 1 cent pay-per-view back in September, and it was a lot of the same stuff. Like, I get that, in both cases, like, they don't want to do a show on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. I get that. For the nobody that buys the shows now, nobody would buy shows on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. I get that. And I get the 1 cent pay-per-view, that it's the whole thing with the Nashville Fairgrounds. They couldn't run a show then, and they just can't go on the road at this point. And, but it's like, is there really that much stuff that's happened since the middle of September that you could say, okay, we're going to stick that in to the year in review shows to make it special and unique? Because to me, it just seems like, hey, remember that show we paid a penny for? We're not going to make it pay $10 for it instead.
No, thanks.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll be back on January 7th, and we'll tell you about the one and only match they officially announced for that show as we go through this episode. And this is the episode where if you're a fan of Jeff Jarrett, this is the show for you. This motherfucker was on the show more than Scott Hudson was. Actually, we should keep count. We should keep count. Who appears on this show more, Jeff Jarrett or Scott Hudson? Now, when we talk about pure time, Jeff Jarrett has an actual match, so by pure time, he's going to be on the show more. But I mean, individual appearances on the show, Jeff Jarrett or Scott Hudson?
Okay, we will do that.
It's almost as if, Jeff Jarrett is using the temporal ham radio to listen to our shows in the future and hear us complain about how Scott Hudson's on the show more than anybody. And he's like, I can top that bitch.
Oh, absolutely, he can.
So before we begin, we tell you what else is happening this week in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And what did I say the last week, the week before, are the three most often repeated letters in like the next year and a half in TNA history?
WGN.
WGN. And this week's update on WGN is that TNA is getting cold feet on the potential WGN deal. This is why Jarrett stopped talking about the major announcement that he teased a few weeks ago, because they are realizing that the Saturday morning at 9 a.m. time slot that WGN is offering isn't a great slot for the price point, and the likelihood of them getting their money back is low. They're also talking about, instead of doing an hour, buying a 30-minute slot, which admittedly would be half the cost, but also probably would be even less effective than the 1-hour show would be. There's more to come on the WGN TNA deal. By the way, they're on AMC now. Is WGN even still a station?
It is now News Nation.
Oh, well, I guess it wouldn't have worked the same way, but it's almost like out of popped if instead of being on AMC, TNA announced that they were going to WGN.
Yeah. Also, WWE had Superstars, the revival of Superstars on WGN for a couple of years.
That's not till like 2009.
I know, but it also kind of makes that Jeff Jarrett actually did the right thing, because that show only lasted for 2 years, then it became internet exclusive before it got dropped completely.
Was it? What was? I guess it was Main Event that was that basically was dropped from whatever network it was on when the WWE network started and they started doing
Ion,
the show live. Yeah. By the way, elsewhere in 2003, this show did sell out with 1,150 people in the Nashville Fairgrounds Arena. Unfortunately, that just meant that more people got into the free line because paid was still the usual 300 people. Which tells you just exactly how much Sting means right now to the company. People are very much willing to see Sting wrestle for free. And elsewhere, there is talk of bringing in the Insane Clown Posse to feud with the 3 Live crew. That sounds like a barn burner.
It's better than what ICP is doing now with their promotion.
Honestly, until the story about Russo joining them came out recently, I didn't even think they still had a promotion.
I know of it because I'm friends with Brian Zane of Wrestling with Regret, and he recently worked a couple of their shows as Claude, but a different version of Claude. Okay. And it's actually not
Claude.
Yeah. The original version of Claude was this supermodel French jackass.
Hammerhead.
Yep. Now, the Claude that he brought into JCW was this capital A artiste. And he came out to the fucking Joy of Painting theme.
Well, of all the songs that you could come out to, wouldn't the Joy of Painting be one of them?
Personally, no. I'd rather come out to, like, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm kind of shocked that Multi-Gimmick Mike hasn't done a Carmen Sandiego gimmick yet. Yes, I actually watched Lunacy.
I had no idea who the hell you were talking about, so there's that. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, if I'm gonna have the "Where in the World Is Carmen Sandiego" song, I'm gonna hire Rockapella to show up and sing it live. They cannot be doing anything more interesting right now.
They are still performing, believe it or not.
Right?
It's
It's
not the
2025. If nothing else, retro is always in.
uh it's some of the original crew of Rockapella left because vocal cords get shot or their heart just isn't in it anymore.
Listen to
But
your heart when it's talking to you. Anywho,
all right,
so
now let's make ourselves sad and let's talk about this pay-per-view.
um, so the show begins similarly to how last week's show began, with footage from a pre-show meeting. They are really enjoying this meeting gimmick here, and at 5:31 Central Time, I had to pop for that one because last week they showed whatever time it was in Eastern Time, even though the show's in the Central Time zone. This week they rectified that error and put Central Time up in the corner. And we had a babyface meeting with Eric Watts. Watts said that Callis and Jarrett are trying to get him out of as director of authority. He said that due to a legal injunction, Sting will not be getting a title shot tonight. But however, he did say that on January 7th, Jeff Jarrett will defend the world title. And this is a confusing string of thoughts throughout the show. But he says Jarrett will face Raven if Raven wins tonight. And then both AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown won a world title match. And then Goldilocks got upset about Watts potentially not being in charge anymore.
Yeah, it was kind of confusing, but the fraying of Goldilocks is gonna be a running theme for the rest of the pay-per-view's existence.
Oh, yippee ki yay, Melon Farmer.
It takes off fully in February. And if what you said earlier is true, that Russo is not on the writing team, has no booking power, then you could put what will happen in throughout the rest of Goldilocks run, which is the last pay-per-view we do for this show, is her last appearance in TNA.
I will be very sad to see Goldilocks go. So, remember like a year ago when Disco Inferno started making regular appearances in the show and they could not keep track of how to spell his first name? And it would go from Glenn with one end to Glenn with two ends, back and forth. And I would scream every week about his fucking spelling of his name. This is where Cindy says yes, and then I go on. So
They did the same thing for
TNA,
Eric Watts.
oh, it's one upping this here. TNA has brand new graphics, which I'm I like the idea of brand new graphics because the old ones sucked. And I can't even explain why, but I both like the new graphics and dislike the new graphics. But the one thing that popped out was they spelled Eric Watts' name wrong. Eric Watts, his first name is Erik. That has always been Eric Watts' first name. However, somebody in the TNA production, truck now lists his name as Eric, Erick. I swear, this is the WCW
Bruh.
production staff. Because if you watch those early 90s, especially early 90s WCW shows, they sucked at spelling people's names right in the graphics. Like Arn Anderson was spelled Arne for the longest time. And like they'd misspell city and states when they put that on the screen. It's like, Jerry Jarrett, when we were talking about his book last year, he talked about how one of the issues he had with Jeff was that Jeff wanted to hire all the old WCW guys. And Jerry, we can argue all day how much Jerry really understood at this point about pro wrestling. He understood that they should not have been relying on WCW guys, including the WCW production staff.
Like the ECW production staff was right there.
The problem
It would have worked for cheaper.
The problem is the WCW production staff, the majority of them, I'm sure, lived in the South because they were mostly people who worked for Turner. And to get the ECW production staff was like Charlie Brazil and Ron Buffone who live in New York. It's like they weren't going to spend the money to bring the production team in from New York. So anyway, Eric Watts is now Eric with a CK Watts. We'll see how long that lasts. So Jeff Jarrett and Don Callis came out to gloat about Jarrett not having to defend the title. Jarrett said he got a big win over Watts and the TNA board of directors, and said that if this was a football game, the score would be Jeff Jarrett 45, Eric Watts 0. This brought out Eric Watts to once again refer to him as Triple J, and if nothing else, Watts has successfully gotten the crowd to yell ass anytime he holds up the mic after saying Jack. Still don't know why that's the one word that Eric Watts refuses to say.
Aren't they still under that no swearing rule?
But that rule got basically ignored because didn't Dusty Rhodes start swearing like a week or two after New Jack got fired?
Essentially, maybe that's they use that as an excuse just to get rid of New Jack.
I'm sure they needed the excuse. So let's hear. Watts stumbled over his words while talking about Jarrett getting out of a title match. Watts kept talking about Jarrett wearing his sister's underwear for whatever reason. Jarrett called Goldilocks a whore and a gold digger. Jarrett, who came to the ring in his gear, said he's going to go backstage and watch the rest of the show. So Watts was like, nah, brah, and sent Sting to the ring to wrestle the main event in the opener. So, I mean, I get the reason why fans are into Eric Watts is because he parties with them before the show. It's actually the same reason why Lance Hoyt got so over with the Orlando crowd, because he'd party with them before the show, so they would all cheer for him during the show. But still, there has to be somebody better for this position than fucking Eric Watts. And actually, the sad thing is the person better for the position was standing in the ring who hasn't been allowed to talk in what feels like weeks at this point, and wasn't allowed to talk tonight either. And he's actually out the door and like doesn't he leave right after the match with Eric Watts? Like, I feel like he wins that match and is never seen again.
No, he's still there. He's there for the episode after, and I think he's out the door then. So he's there for the under new management show, which, if you didn't know the behind the scenes news of TNA and you saw what was going to happen, you would have thought, oh, Russo's back. Russo's writing again. Nope.
Keep in mind, they're doing such a great job of using Don Callis, the guy who's like the number one heat-getting heel in AEW right now. They're doing such a great job of using Don Callis that in about a month or so, he leaves wrestling and doesn't come back for almost 20 years. Well, not quite. He leaves wrestling and doesn't come back for like 12 years. So,
and to be perfectly honest, I think he would get, if COVID didn't happen, wrestling-wise, if COVID didn't happen and they still did the partnership with AEW, those TNA reactions for Don Callis would be absolutely brutal. He would get that number one heat magnet spot and have it locked.
He would be managing Frankie Kazarian right now. So anyway, we get our first match, which is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Jeff Jarrett with Don Callis versus Sting. The match began and Jarrett ran away. Sting walked towards him and ended up standing in the stands while Jarrett was now in the ring. Eventually, Jarrett went into the crowd for them to fight. This company, which half-assed enforces the rules, did not even consider a count-out or a disqualification. This wasn't even good crowd brawling. They literally walked around the arena. Finally, over 5 minutes into the match, this match is 8 minutes long, and they spend 5 minutes doing what can very generously be called crowd brawling. Very generously. They end up in the ring. Sting gets on the Scorpion Deathlock, and we get the interference. The red shirts run in and get taken out by AMW. Kid Cash slipped him a guitar, dig. However, AJ Styles ran in and took the guitar away, and Sting pinned Jarrett with a Scorpion Death Drop. This was such a nothing match. This is the fourth match that Sting was contracted for. And remember, we were talking about this a few months ago, that Sting really didn't want to come back, and they basically forced him to. And this is what you get out of it. You know? He got forced to come in for a match that he really wasn't up for, and he walked through the motions almost literally. I'm pretty sure he didn't do a Stinger splash at any point. It's like, I think the only bump he took was on the Scorpion Death Drop. And I hope TNA feels like they got their money's worth out of him. And it's funny because we talked about this last week, and like, because I could swear he referees a random 4-way in March. And while I didn't look too deep into this, I know he's back in March at one point, but he doesn't wrestle until he comes back in 2006.
Yeah, it is a 4-way. When we talk about that whole scenario, a lot of interesting things happen. Like Raven doesn't have his even flow theme. He's got a knockoff version of his ECW theme.
You got to keep them separated.
Yep. He took 3 bumps during this match. 3.
It's 2 more than I thought he did.
He did a Stinger splash.
He did?
I think, yeah, he did. He then did a shoulder bump where he went to the ropes and fell down and hit Jeff Jarrett in the dick. Then the Scorpion Death Drop and the 3. 3 bumps.
3 isn't a bump. The Stinger splash isn't a bump. Splash in the corner.
All right, so 2 bumps.
Oh, I feel like I'm almost being too generous with the score. 2.5 out of 10.
2.0 out of 10.
You know what's
Dear
funny? Like,
Lord.
I've mentioned this many times before. Like, you know, this is around the time when I was in college, and I didn't have the ability to buy pay-per-view, thank God. And so I would just follow TNA on the internet and through PWI. And I remember reading the PWI Almanac, which had the results of all the pay-per-views, and it said Sting versus Jarrett was the opener. And I was like, wow, why would they put that match as the opener? And then when I see the show, I'm like, thank God it was the fucking opener. Can you imagine this in the main event? And it's funny because it's like, you know, later on when, you know, Sting comes in full time, you know, there's this kind of a running joke that he only puts in his most effort when he's winning the world title. If you look at his best matches in TNA were arguably when he won the world title those 3 times at Bound for Glory.
Yeah.
And it's like this right here, this was definitely This was the Sting who's collecting a paycheck Sting. Sting who's doing a favor because Jerry Jarrett broke him into the business Sting. And it also shows you, like, just how much of a new audience TNA got when they got onto Spike. Because it's only 2 years from now that Sting returning to the ring does one of the biggest buy rates in TNA history. Even though if you've been watching TNA from the beginning, which obviously not that many people were, Sting's been on the goddamn show 4 times already. And he did that goddamn interview over the summer another 4 times. Sting's been on the show a lot.
9 if you count the when he was guest referee for a 4-way.
Well, that's next year. I'm meaning like right now.
Then it is 8.
After the match, Jeff Jarrett threw a tantrum. And this should have been our hint that this was going to be the Jeff Jarrett show. Jarrett throws a tantrum, getting in all the ringside workers' face, including Tenay and West. Finally, Jarrett put his hands on Tenay, and Tenay shoved him away, necessitating security to pull Jarrett away. So since this was one continuous segment, I consider this one appearance for Jeff Jarrett.
Agreed.
To even up the odds. I guess, do you have any thoughts on the post-match shenanigans?
I have no thoughts about this whatsoever. I just want to move on. It was
Jeff Jarrett is. I know when I talked about this with Trey, and maybe even with you, it's like, I get that Jarrett and Tenay, like, they had a thing in WCW, but like, A, WCW went out of business, and B, nobody gives a fuck because, again, Jeff Jarrett is never going to wrestle Mike Tenay. They're never going to have a match. Thus, he should not be feuding with the lead announcer. And this shit continues for a while. So to even up the score...
It continues for a long time.
Even the scored 1, Scott Hudson is now in Raven's lair talking about the 6-man cage match tonight. CM Punk said his and Julio's only objective is that Raven gets everything he deserves. This is when I wrote, and I quote, "Uh-oh." Raven said his soul is a black bottomless pit. He will bring power, rage, fury, chaos, and weapons of mass destruction to the cage. Saddam Hussein, in real life, Saddam Hussein was captured 4 days before this show on December 13th, 2003, and always until his death claimed innocence on having WMDs. Where was Bush to capture Raven?
That would necessitate that Raven would have to be from foreign descent. And since Raven wasn't, he didn't give a shit.
Oh, Raven would have to have oil. Oh, did I say that out loud? By the way, happy Hanukkah to Raven and any of our Jewish listeners. So last week we talked about how Tracy's pants got pulled down during the match between Michael Shane and Christopher Daniels, and I noted that Tracy was so embarrassed she changed her clothes entirely, and you said it was because her pants got destroyed, and to be honest, I wasn't really paying that close attention to her pants. Well, they showed a replay here, and it was very obvious that Tracy's pants were destroyed when Christopher Daniels pulled them down last week.
That's what you get when you buy your pants off of Temu.
Yes. Hey, of all the people to show their bare ass on TV, Tracy, one of the nicer looking bottoms to be featured. Christopher Daniels versus Chris Sabin. Daniels was called the Lord of the Ring by Borash. Does that mean he stole DDP's Battle Bowl ring?
I forgot all about that. God, Slamboree 96 was another shit show, wasn't it?
Honestly, of all the Battle Bowls, I don't think that was the worst.
No, 92 was by a country mile.
Oh, 92 was good-ish. Like, it was better than 91 and miles ahead of 93.
I kind of have a soft spot for 93.
I would say 92 was the best one. I say '93, Roman Reigns was at that show and decided he was going to try to be a football player instead of a wrestler. So, by the way, did you notice that Don West randomly called Tenay Rocky at the start of the match?
No, I didn't. What is that?
Yeah. He randomly called Tenay Rocky, and they moved on and never mentioned it. And it was like, I don't know. So I don't want to alarm anyone, but Christopher Daniels and Chris Sabin had a better wrestling match than the opener. However, I don't want to alarm anyone further, but the crowd was less into this match than they were into a match with a big star in it.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame too.
Now, with that said, the crowd was more into this week than they were last week, as there were more than one or two people doing the Fallen Angel sucks dueling chant. Despite being a babyface, Sabin tried to pull Daniels' hair, and well, Christopher Daniels has been bald for a very long time, you see, so pulling the hair really didn't work. Sabin went for some move, but Elix Skipper ran down and gave Sabin a forearm to the back. Daniels pinned Sabin with an angel's wings. After the match, Skipper stood on the ramp and threw up the triple X sign. Winner, Christopher Daniels, rating 7.0 out of 10.
Well, I graded the last match, a half point lower than you did. We're evening things out. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I thought this was the match of the night, and it wasn't even close.
Just scrolling down quickly, I have it tied for match of the night with a bit of a surprising match to tie it with. Backstage, Jeff Jarrett took the lead and was yelling at all the heels, saying that they all need to win their match tonight. Abyss was randomly covered in sweat. Why? I don't know. It was December in Nashville, and while I know Nashville is not Boston or Seattle, I'm pretty sure Nashville gets cold. And Abyss was sweating like he just ran a 10K. Simon and Swinger showed up and said they will run over AJ and D'Lo tonight. If Russo was writing this, they would have done that literally. But spoiler alert, there was no running over of AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown. Any thoughts?
I like Swinger and Diamond, and that's pretty much it.
Okay,
but it does kind of set up what will probably happen.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, then we get David Young and Glenn Gilberti versus America's Most Wanted in a street fight. Gilberti claimed that he was undefeated in TNA street fights, which is technically true because he defeated AJ Styles in one back in April. So going to this match, he has a record of 1-0. Storm was in an A shirt and blue jeans. And the funny thing is, Chris Harris wears that exact same outfit for a future street fight of some kind. So even though this was first, obviously, since Storm doesn't have his big shaggy beard yet, I kept thinking it was Harris in the A shirt and blue jeans. And the funny thing is, for whatever reason, I just like after I watched this, I was doing some shit, so I just threw on some background noise. I put up a random episode of Impact from 2005, and Chris Harris came out in an A shirt and blue jeans. So there you go. This was a weapons match. They got I got a ladder out, and Storm on the outside that is slingshot to Young, and a ladder was pretty close to pulling a Jeff Hardy. Wow, I fucked that one up. They got a ladder out, and Storm on the outside did a slingshot to Young into the ladder and was pretty close to pulling a Jeff Hardy and slamming the back of his head into the ladder. There we go. Congratulations, Ari. You finished the sentence here. Harris and Gilberti did some good crowd brawling. Yeah, there was walk and punch, but it wasn't as blatant as it was in the opener. Gilberti took a flat back bump on the floor, which considering, remember earlier this year when Glenn Gilberti was out for like 2 or 3 months because he had a fucked up back?
Yeah.
This may not have been the smartest move for Disco Inferno. Harris went face first into the ladder when Gilberti avoided a spear. The finish off, Storm pinned Young after a top rope senton atomico threw Young on a table. Now, I'm not saying everyone involved isn't supremely talented, but this match overachieved in my opinion. I have this match tied for the best match on the show at a 7.0 out of 10.
We've seen so many street fights, so many hardcore brawls watching this show.
We've seen one or two.
I just, aside from the swanton that Storm did, I just didn't care. I mean, it's Gilberti and Young. It's the jobber squad of Planet Jarrett.
But hey, AMW, the best team in the business, pulled a hell of a match out of them, I thought.
They did, but I just didn't care, so 4 out of 10.
How dare you not care? It's possible I wouldn't have cared had I not rated this match before the post-match angle. So after the match, outran redshirt security to attack Chris Harris, handcuffing him around the top turnbuckle. Storm super kicked a chair to Northcutt's face, and then because what is essentially a 2-on-1 advantage isn't enough for the heels, we needed Jeff Jarrett in his third appearance to be the ultimate equalizer on this show. Jarrett attacked Storm, which allowed the red shirts to give him a spike pile driver on a chair. Then Jarrett el-kabonged Chris Harris. Now, I would still like to know how they got Chris Harris loose from those handcuffs.
Probably a skeleton key or something that you can get from that maker of handcuffs. If it's a consumer grade handcuff, which I think those are, then there's a skeleton key that you could buy.
I get that, but that's also saying that TNA officials just have extra handcuff keys backstage for any situation. It's like, oh man, we need to make sure, in case somebody handcuffs their foe, we need to make sure we have a key to get them out. See, I want to see what one or the other happen in wrestling one day. Either the guy gets handcuffed and is stuck there the entire show because no one has the key except for the heel, and the heel's not giving it up. Or, like this, Chris Harris was handcuffed to the top rope, and we don't have a key. How do we keep the show going? We're just going to take down the top rope and worry about getting Chris Harris on loose later.
I still like my skeleton key theory because that's kind of how Goldilocks got Eric Watts out, remember, in that 6-man?
But actually, even better, if you unhook the top rope, you can just slip the top rope and the turnbuckle through Harris's arms, and then, and then reattach the top rope. Now, then you still have to get Chris Harris loose, but, that's backstage's problem.
Nothing a good hacksaw won't fix. Ho!
I'd pay to watch 2 hours of Jim Duggan swinging a 2x4 at the chain on Chris Harris's handcuffs.
Jim Duggan probably saw the handcuffs more than he did a Super Colo during that random match on WCW Pro.
But you also know that he would miss the handcuffs many times, and so you have to have a camera on Chris Harris's face to see his reaction to being hit in the hand and backs repeatedly with the 2x4.
Now that's worth $10.
This is the quality of the show. We are entertaining ourselves with the thought of Jim Duggan accidentally hitting Chris Harris with a 2x4 for 2 hours. Now, you may ask yourself, itself, all the heels are friends. And we saw in the opening segment 30 minutes ago that all the baby faces are now friends too. Where the hell are the baby faces to help their friends Chris Harris and James Storm? Well, you see, AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown were standing backstage with Scott Hudson for their interview. They could not run out and make the save because they had more important things to do, like talk about their own match. AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown with Scott Hudson was on his second appearance on the show. Talk about how they have mutual respect for each other. D'Lo says that once he wins the world title, he will give AJ a title shot. I like that. Like, they're like barely acknowledging that these two had any kind of history together. Like, it gets brought up in passing that they were a team, and even more in passing, they had a fucking feud with each other. They act like these two are just like, oh my god, what a bizarre dream team this is. Who could ever imagine AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown as a team? So then, because I'm assuming you don't have any thoughts on Scott Hudson's second appearance on the show.
No, he did his job well.
What do you think about AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown? Did they do their job well?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is why we get paid the big bucks on this show.
I wish I paid a big buck for the show.
We then get Steinman Diamond and Johnny Swinger versus AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown in what's called a dream match. Now, they kept calling this a dream match during the entire fucking show up to this point. And all I could think was, okay, that is a gross exaggeration. Simon and Swinger are a good team. AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown are a pretty good team, but I would not call a tag team match between them on the third match on a show a dream match. However, they finally explained what they actually meant by that. Even though this is a tag team match, the winner of the fall can have their dream match by challenging for any title they want. This was a very Vince Russo match to book, and of course, if this was Vince Russo, the finish would be AJ or D'Lo turning on each other and letting the heels win anyway. But
the ending of this match was. Oh, can we just skip to the ending? Because the match itself was okay.
Well, I just want to say, like, that they finally explained the January 7th situation for the world title match. Because it wasn't explained at all during before this. So the situation is this. Jarrett's going to defend the title on January 7th. If Raven wins the main event, Raven's going to get the world title match. If Raven doesn't win, then either AJ Styles or D'Lo Brown will get the match based on which of the two of them win this match. Now, of course, they did not explain what would happen if none of the three won, and that's a comment we'll talk about later. So let me just make sure there's nothing else I want to talk about. They had a nice dive spot, but yeah. So go to the finish.
Okay, the Diamond and Swinger are down, and D'Lo Brown and AJ are going for a double frog splash.
See, I don't think they were going for a double frog splash. I think AJ was going for the spiral tap, and D'Lo was going for the frog splash.
So D'Lo hits his, AJ falls off. And when he does fall off, they cut to that camera, and there's Jarrett. And Tenay says he shook the ropes, so he fell. No, Jarrett missed his cue.
Exactly. Jarrett was supposed to shake the ropes. He did not. Or, and maybe I should rewind and watch it, or the production team was so out of position that you didn't fucking see it. And the fact that we didn't get a replay of it shows you that either A, everybody missed it, or B, Jarrett missed his cue. Either way, LOL TNA. By the way, Jeff Jarrett now in his fourth appearance on this show.
And
So
Diamond and Swinger hit the problem solver for the 3, and they'll have a tag title match against 3 Live Crew on January 7th.
So you're just, blowing over the headline here. Johnny Swinger pins D'Lo Brown. So based on the rules of the match, Johnny Swinger can now have any title match he wants. However, apparently the decision was already made for him because they immediately announced that he is going to have a tag team title match. If I'm Johnny Swinger, I'm like, fuck, where's my world title match?
It's
it's
not going to happen because he's aligned with, as far as we know, he's aligned with Jarrett. So he's not going to rock that boat.
Allegedly. I mean, we've seen Sabin and Swigger, basically saying they're not really part of that team for a while and arguing with main event Glenn Gilberti and young Jeffrey Jarrett. Now, hey, it's not about weight limits, it's about no limits. Maybe Johnny Swinger wants to get an Ultimate X too.
I don't think the Master of the Swing thing is he don't like heights.
Maybe Bruce comes back and Johnny Swinger wants a shot at Miss TNA.
Scott Hudson in his 3rd appearance of the night is with Low Key. Low Key does his usual size spiel. It's not the size of the fighter, it's the size of the fight in the fighter or whatever. And Skipper comes out.
It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's just about the size of the fight in the dog.
So Skipper comes out, he wants Triple X to come back together, and that ain't happening because Loki says Triple X is dead. There.
And that Christopher Daniels cannot be trusted. And Skipper said they're family. Now, what I did pop for was Low Key is giving Scott Hudson the death stare at the beginning of it. And I'm like, I think it's because he found another bald white guy in Nashville. And so he's sizing up Scott Hudson to see if he can carry on to the tradition of bald white guys.
And Scott Hudson with background in... Wasn't he also working as a police?
I know he has a shoot job with the government. And that's why when WWE was doing their WCW relaunch, that it's he was willing to do it, but he had to know what day because he can only get off one day a week. And he had to know what day it was that he could get off to work for them.
That's why he was only there, two times, and that was it?
Yeah. Well, I think 3 times because he did he did commentary on Raw and SmackDown that week, and then he did at least one backstage interview. So I remember him interviewing Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson. So he at least did 3 shows. So we then get X Division champion Michael Shane with Tracy versus Low Key. And I had to pop for something in this match because one of the first spots, Low Key knocks Shane out of the ring and does the Tiger Feint kick, which is the 619, just the proper name, the proper legal Christian name for the 619. However, Shane was too smart, so he ducked. And while he's pointing at his head about how smart he is, Low Key just does it again and kicks him right in the fucking head. I popped. Shane took over when Key was on the apron. Shane knocked him off the apron and he crashed into the guardrail. Shane tried to play Low Key's game of doing hard strikes and kicks. However, no one in wrestling, as Michael Shane will find out in a few minutes, no one in wrestling can throw strikes like Low Key. Shane did a top rope elbow, which was pretty goddamn picture perfect. It was pretty damn close to his cousin's version. So, hey, this Michael Shane, I know you're a huge fan of the Michael Shane title reign, but this guy's got talent.
I'm not denying he's got talent, it's just his booking was bad.
The finish was fucked up, and it turns out the finish was technically Low Key's fault. Because Low Key basically knocked Michael Shane out at one point, and so they called the finish early. But I guess nobody told everybody this. because Low Ki does a 450. Shane gets his knees up and then cradles Low Ki. Low Ki very obviously kicked out at 2, but the timekeeper rang the bell and time stood still. Then, because the referee didn't wave it off, the music guy played Shane's music and Borash declared Shane the winner. Low Ki was pissed off about the blown finish, and they basically just went in and did the finish that they were going to do anyway. Because it turns out what happened was Low Ki stiffed Michael Shane, and somebody made the call to end the match. And whether or not it was, I guess it wasn't properly conveyed to Low Ki, and that's why he kicked out when he wasn't supposed to. And so what happened after this was Shane Douglas ran down and got kicked in the head. Then Michael Shane stopped Low Ki from giving Tracy a key crusher. Then she feigned a knee injury. Douglas hit Low Ki with a chain assisted punch. Douglas then cut a promo saying 2004 would be the year of the new franchise. Elix Skipper ran down and beat up the Elder Shane. Chris Sabin ran down and backdropped Skipper out of the ring onto Douglas. Christopher Daniels ran down and attacked Chris Sabin. Meanwhile, Skipper and Douglas fought out of the arena while the 4 X Division guys had a pull apart. Eric Watts with a CK then came out and officially announced Ultimate X2 on January 7th in the most annoying way possible that put him over everybody else in the fucking match. He didn't even fucking name them. He's like, you, and you are going to have an Ultimate X championship match.
And I know Watts probably wasn't thinking straight because he was still probably exhausted from a barn burner match he had on Explosion.
Oh,
Guess
I'm
who
sure
he wrestled on Explosion?
Altar Boy Luke.
Chris Hero.
There you go. Well, Chris Hero's been doing a few Explosion spots lately.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all of that stuff was supposed to be what happened. And it was supposed to be the finish to lead to Eric Watts doing that. I guess, well, the finish and then with Shane Douglas cut the promo, and that's where it would start the post-match stuff. But still, that was an overbooked mess. And you can't tell me this Ultimate X build, they've been talking about it for a few weeks. They were like, oh man, we should have Ultimate X2. And Shane Douglas at one point said Ultimate X2 is going to be on January 7th. And then everyone just ignored him when he said that. And it's like, you're telling me that my idea of just having 3 qualifying matches where where Sabin, Daniels, and Low Ki all won a match would not have been better than this? Where it's like they talked about it and then just like, oh yeah, we're just going to have it now.
It'd be miles better.
Honestly, I would rather have Don Callis have had to explain Ultimate X again.
It's still one of the greatest speeches in TNA that we've watched. Was Callis just describing Ultimate X with a $10 whiteboard. Which,
it's not what you make, it's what you save.
Yep.
It's why TNA or why WCW used the same voice distortion gimmick box for both the Black Scorpion and the Shockmaster.
And it was only both times.
Yes. Sting, do you remember Tupelo, Mississippi in '86? Ha ha ha, Sting. By the way, I gave that match a 6.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 6.0 out of 10.
By the way, so since I brought up the Black Scorpion and did my awesome Ole Anderson impression, for about 5 minutes, the Black Scorpion angle made sense as to why it would have been Ric Flair. For 5 minutes, it made sense. Because after Sting beat Flair for the world title, they went out on TV and said that Flair would never get another shot at Sting. So it made perfect sense that Flair's coming up with some weird fucking way to get around that so he could get a title shot at Sting. However, as soon as they started doing the "do you remember blah 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 in '86" stuff, like that's when it stopped making sense that it was Flair. And the funny thing is like it never made any sense to who it would be because the clues were to make smart fans think he was talking about the Ultimate Warrior, that Warrior was going to be brought in instead to wrestle Sting. Except if you were a smart fan, you would have, at the time, the very few people who were actually newsletter readers, you would have known it wasn't going to be the fucking Ultimate Warrior.
Even if you're a dumb fan who just watched the TV shows, know that wasn't going to happen because Warrior was the champion.
But no one would have known that. Like, I can't imagine there were that many people in 1990, that many casual fans watching the television show that would have known that Sting and the Ultimate Warrior, A, were broken into business together, and B, wrestled together in Tupelo in 86 and California in 85 or whatever the other clues were. It's like they were setting themselves up for disaster because they never, like, Ole never had a reveal. Like, that's the funniest thing ever. It's like Ole never had a reveal. Like, the best we got was maybe Al Perez. And that would have been a bigger fucking stinker than Ric Flair being forced to have a non Ric Flair match.
Like, wouldn't it have killed? No, that's right. I forgot. They switched out Flair and Wyndham at Starrcade 90 because the Doom match.
I tell the whole story in my amazing first book, 40 Years of Pay-Per-View, Book 1, 1985 through 1990. But around November of 1990, Ole was officially fired as Booker, and it was the worst kept secret in wrestling that Dusty was coming in as the new Booker. However, because Ole was gone in November and Dusty couldn't come in until January, we needed an interim Booker, and that's when Barry Windham was essentially the Booker of the promotion for 2 months. He was what what's his name? Crockett was after Dusty got fired. He was a maintenance booker, and basically he and Jim Herd went to Flair and begged him to do the Black Scorpion reveal, and Flair basically agreed to do it in exchange for him being winning the title back from Sting as soon as possible after the reveal. And so
was
that's
the title
how it
change on a house show, or was that at a Clash?
It was a house show. It was East Rutherford, New Jersey, in a blizzard in front of about 5,000 people.
Well, at least the action was hot.
There you go. And that was also what was it? That month they did the Clash of the Champions with Flair and Scott Steiner, and that allegedly Scott Steiner, they were thinking about putting the belt on Steiner, but he didn't want to break up the team with Rick at the time. And then Flair apparently, for whatever reason, Flair just was whether he's in a shitty mood or whatever, Flair just, dead weighted Scotty on a lot of his moves, and it led to a lot of the crap between those two that existed until WCW went out of business. Needless to say, by the way, the backstage shenanigans of WCW more entertaining than TNA 2003. Scott Hudson, in his fourth appearance on the show, was now with the 3 Live crew. This was supposed to be funny. Scott Hudson is a white man, and he did the very white person intro of a rap group, saying all of the cool black hip hop phrases, but doing it very whitely.
How do you do, fellow kiddos? And all the girlies say he's pretty fly for a white guy.
And since 3 Live Crew wrestled on Explosion, they're doing nothing here except wishing everybody a Merry Christmas.
Actually, they didn't. They were just brought in for this promo.
No, I could swear I saw in the Observer they had an Explosion match.
Last week's Explosion.
Maybe it was a dark match, but I saw they had an opener. Talk about this promo in the Girls of TNA calendar while I do some digging here.
All right, so they showed off like 2 minutes of this, which was essentially the Cage Girls, Tracy, Trinity, and Goldilocks doing all these alluring poses, and Goldie just, lightly shoving Trinity and all this stuff. And it's like if it was one of those Divas tapes that you saw in 2002, 2003. But if it was on a home VHS recorder instead of professionally done.
Yes. This was the least sexy commercial you've ever seen to make you want to buy a calendar full of sexy women. And by the way, according to the December 29th, 2003 edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, 12/17 NWA TNA pay-per-view, Conan and Ron Killings and BG James beat Patrick Schultz and Delirious and Nate Webb.
And that was a dark match.
By the way, in case you're wondering where Sonny Saki was, he defeated Domino on Explosion that will air this week. It's possible they just taped extra stuff so they could do 2 episodes of Explosion since they're not going to be on for a while. But in case you're wondering where everybody else is, Elix Skipper beat Altar Boy Luke, Shark Boy beat Jay Fury, Kid Cash beat Jarrell Clark. Didn't you say Chris Hero wrestled somebody?
Yeah, on the Explosion that aired on 12/20.
Let's see here. It's very possible that they're a week behind on these Explosion Delia Bobs. So let me go back in time to December 22nd, 2003 edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, where there's no Chris Hero here either. So Chris Hero had a match at some point on TNA Explosion, and we cannot tell you when it happened.
12/20, 2003.
Well, that's when the show aired. That's not when the show got taped.
12/17, I have the cage match listings.
Who did he wrestle?
Eric Watts.
Nope, that's what cage match does say. Not saying a cage match has ever not been wrong, because they have been wrong before, but it's also possible that for some reason somebody did not tell Dave all the results. And looking at it, let me see here, because the other matches they listed are Sanjay versus John McChesney and Shark Boy versus Matt Stryker. Well, these results said Shark Boy beat David Young on 12/10, but Sanjay beating John McChesney was 12/10. And let's see here, going back to 12/29. This is more interesting, by the way, than what we're actually supposed to be talking about. Who did I say? Shark Boy beat Matt Stryker with a Y. I don't know when the hell that happened, but that's also not on this. It says that Shark Boy defeated Jay Fury, who, to the best of my knowledge, is not Matt Stryker with a Y. Anyway, because ultimately, again, who gives a shit? Anyway, Mike Tenay dedicates tonight's TNA pay-per-view to the very specific soldiers joining them from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and thanking them for getting Saddam Hussein. For the record, these soldiers were not part of the people who captured Saddam Hussein. And the funny thing is, like, I don't know if he was part of this group, but we were talking about it during your absence that they were talking about doing Bound for Glory from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, because that's where Jimmy Hart's son was stationed while he was in the military. So I'm not sure if Jimmy Hart's son was one of the military members in the background there, but yeah, they were purely going to do it just because Jimmy Hart's son was stationed there, and that might be one of those random ass things they ever almost did. Anyway, this is where they tell us that next week is the Best of the X Division show, and the 31st is the Best of 2003 show. Don West said that Ultimate X2 will have the belt hanging above the ceiling. I got to tell you, in a match that's already kind of complicated and hard for the average person to do, that would make it more complicated if the belt was above the ceiling.
Couldn't be any worse than that fucking red dome that they had.
Well, at least that was inside the building.
Still, though, it was pure shit, though.
You don't enjoy watching a giant red cage match?
I don't enjoy watching a giant red dome match.
Well, is that any better or worse than when WWE had the giant red Hell in a Cell with the mood lighting for Bray Wyatt versus Seth Franklin Rollins?
Oh, good fucking lord, that match.
Yes. See, don't bring up bad red cage matches without bringing up the worst. Anyway,
what would be this? Is that the worst, or the X Division one that was the first match of the launch of the Hogan Bischoff run in TNA?
well, I would still say the Hell in a Cell was worse because, like, it's WWE, not TNA, and B, it was with their big star, and and the feud was so fucked up they had to turn him heel because they'd fucked him up so badly as a babyface. And the worst that happened in the Terror Dome match was that Homicide, who was barely being used already, was pretty much never used again. Now, with that said, I know he got used again, but it's like he got used like 3 more fucking times. It doesn't count.
And it got replaced with his Timu replacement, Anarchia.
Oh, God. Scott Hudson, in his 5th appearance on the show, was with Don Callis, Abyss, and the Red Shirts. Hudson said they're batting 1,000 today, and I'm like, Jarrett literally lost in the opener. And then before Callis could say 3 words, Jeff Jarrett figured out that Scott Hudson had been on the show one more time than he had right now, and he ran in to scream at everybody. Again, Don Callis, you bring him in because he can talk. He can cut promos. He said 3 words on this show, and that might be 3 more words than he said last week.
He did, like I remember all he said, that he was talking with the lawyer guy Stenenbaum, and that he said that he called every crazy house, bar, whatever, and that Piper wasn't there.
Oh yeah, where the hell's Piper this week? Not that we're begging for him, but where the hell is Piper this week?
Probably at home for Christmas with his kids.
With his kids and his beautiful wife. By the way, that does officially tie up the Who's Been on the Show More, Jeff Jarrett to Scott Hudson competition at 5. And then we have 1 match to go, and we'll see if Scott Hudson manages to break that tie. By the way, the only match announced for January 7th is the aforementioned Ultimate X match with the belt hanging above the ceiling. All right. So it's main event time. It's a 6-man tag team match in a cage. Abyss and Red Shirt Security versus The Gathering. And this crowd was dead. D-E-A-D, dead. Because this is what happens when you do a show like this where one person interferes in every fucking match. You know that nothing is going to happen until that one person runs back out. Now, this whole, just reading the fucking story of this match is pissing me off here. So, let's just say this. The red shirts were primarily on offense, and almost everybody bled. So, fast forwarding now. The red shirts set up a double stack of tables in the ring and placed Julio on top of the stack. Legend climbed to the top of the cage, but before, and I quote, Legend could cream Julio, Punk climbed up and yanked him off. Glenn Gilberti ran down with bolt cutters and Kid Cash, so Don Harris and Eric with the CK Watts ran out to stop them. Of course, Jeff Jarrett, in his 6th appearance on the show, ran down to throw handcuffs into the cage. AJ Styles and Sting ran down to attack Jarrett. While this was going on, CM Punk dove off the top of the cage through abyss through both tables, and nobody gave a shit because everybody else was fighting all over the fucking place. Where were all these babyfaces saves for the past hour? Then, this fucking finish was just driving me fucking crazy here. Northcutt and Legend get handcuffed to the top rope. So we have 3 babyfaces, Raven, Punk, and Julio, and 1 monster, Abyss. For some reason, instead of all 3 heels ganging up on Abyss, Punk and Julio decided to start punching the red shirts, so Abyss gave Raven a black hole slam. Raven then chaired Abyss, and each red shirt got a concerto. Again, Punk and Julio gave both Kevin Northcutt and Legend, I almost said Ryan Wilson, but it's Legend, a concerto, the double chair shot that Edge and Christian made popular and famous. Then, 12, 13, 14 minutes in to a bloody 6-man street fight cage match. It's a swerve, bro. Punk and Julio gave Raven a concerto, and Abyss pinned him. Just so we're clear about how stupid this fucking finish was. And this is one of my pet peeves about fucking wrestling. And it drove me fucking crazy here. Punk and Julio did not decide to turn on Raven 30 seconds before the end of the match. Punk and Julio planned to turn on Raven by the beginning of the show because Punk did that promo saying that Raven will get everything he deserves tonight. So they already knew they were going to turn on Raven. If they knew they were going to turn on Raven, why did they get in a cage match with him and team with him and help him beat up 3 opponents? Why did they bleed for him? Why did they dive off the top of the cage for him? Why did any of this fucking happen?
Maybe they wanted to beat up the red shirts.
And Abyss? What did Abyss do to them?
Didn't Abyss try to give him a black hole slam or double choke slam last week?
So what? When the only time I can remember, they did the heel turn in a cage match and it made sense because it happened immediately. And I know, shockingly, Paul Heyman was behind this. ECW, they did a 6-man tag team cage match at Heatwave 97. It was Van Dam, Sabu, and Jerry Lawler versus Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman. And they had a mystery partner that they'd teased for weeks who this mystery partner was going to be. And that mystery partner was Ravishing Rick Rude. Rick Rude, who was doing commentary with Joey Styles, he came out, he walked into the ring, got in the cage, and immediately laid out Tommy Dreamer. He didn't sit and have a match for 15 minutes where he beat up Jerry Lawler and Rob Van Dam and Sabu. He went into the ring, beat up Tommy Dreamer because that's what he was going to do at the end anyway, and he left. Because it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to have him be on their side for 15 minutes and then turn on them. It's why I always bitch every time you have a Battle Royal or a Royal Rumble where 2 people are teaming up to beat up everybody else, and then one will randomly turn on the other halfway through. Why would you do that?
It ain't hard.
One second here. Since you're gonna give us our Kevin Sullivan here. 1 second.
It ain't that fucking hard, guys. We ain't building a rocket. We're getting guys over in a fake fucking business.
Now, I get, as we mentioned, every other territory in wrestling had done the CM Punk Raven storyline throughout 2003. Every other indie, including Ring of Honor. I'm pretty sure, and I haven't gotten that far in my Ring of Honor rewatch, the feud in Ring of Honor is over now, I'm pretty sure. And of course, now that every other indie company has milked that feud for as much as they could and got as much money as they could out of it, TNA, the people who don't like money, they are now going to do that feud. So I gave this match a 4.0 out of 10 because apparently I'm a glutton for punishment still.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Well, when was the feud ender? Probably Glory by Honor 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But again, it's like this feud got run into the ground by every indie company in the fucking United States in 2003.
And nobody was looking forward to watching it again.
Anyway, what did you give this match?
A 3 because the ending was fucking awful.
And so we go off the air. Allegedly, Jeff Jarrett's going to defend the world title on January 7th, but he doesn't have a challenger, which, hey, who knows? Maybe Paul London will be pulled out of a hopper to get a title match on January 7th. It's usually either him or Funaki that usually would always have their names randomly pulled. So, anywho, that does it for TNA 2003. Now, match quality, we do get, a higher than average 5.33 because if nothing else, Dutch Mantel and Scott D'Amore and anybody else who's helping to put the show together, they at least know to put the good wrestlers together to have good matches. Overall enjoyment, 5.0 out of 10. The repetitive booking of this whole show made it a lot less enjoyable by the end. Literally, the only matches we didn't have to watch Jeff Jarrett run in on were the matches building up Ultimate X, and I'm only partially surprised he didn't put himself in that either. Imagine if Chris Sabin knew he could win the world title this soon. Jarrett would have been hitting him with a guitar by this point, too. Future build, 4.0 out of 10, because like I said earlier, they've been talking about Ultimate X2 for a few weeks, but the final build was so disjointed and rushed that it's like it had no impact. Everything else on this show did not make me excited for 2004. Why did TNA always have to be a low-rent WWE? They couldn't just be their own thing and make their own style, For all the people who bitch about AEW, the one thing you can never accuse AEW of being is just like WWE. So that gives us an overall rating of a 4.78. We're ending 2003 with a bang, Cindy.
Yeah, we are. Good Lord. 2004 is next, and
we have 8 months to go.
8.5, but who's counting?
January 7th to September 10th. 8 months and 3 days. And keeping in mind,
yeah,
that we're going to be in the middle of the John Bradshaw Layfield WWE title reign as this show is wrapping up.
Which, in hindsight, that title reign, some people consider it the worst title reign before Jinder got his title reign.
It was the worst drawing title reign, in forever. Him and Diesel duked it out over who was worst drawing as champion.
I think Diesel had it worse because just the entire industry in '95 was in the shit.
Like, also the issue is he had no heels to work with. It's like they were loaded with top baby faces, and it's like who is he fucking wrestling? He's wrestling Sid. He's wrestling Mabel. It's like that's his fucking title reign. It's like, they could have turned Razor Ramon heel. They could have turned a few people heel, and they didn't. And it's like his best friend stabbed him in the back at WrestleMania to the point where they forced him to fucking turn babyface because, they couldn't keep him as a fucking heel at that point. And yeah, it's like the only person who knew how to get a match out of Kevin Nash was fucking Brett. And yeah.
I had an idea on how to better have Nash be the champ instead of the 8 seconds at MSG.
See, I think what would have been better off is you have Nash as the heel world champion. And instead of Backlund winning the title, you do the same match where Brett's in the chicken wing forever and a day, but somehow, some way, Bret Hart gets out of it and he somehow retains the title. And I don't know how you would have done it when the parameters of that match, because that match, was a submission match where you had to throw in the towel, but you figure out a way to do it. And Bret retains the title, but he's fucked up. His shoulders hurt, his arms hurt, but he's a fighting champion. And he's going to go to Madison Square Garden on Saturday and defend against this big bastard heel. And the big bastard heel beats his fucking ass, blitzes him and wins the title and has a year-long reign as a heel. And you have all these great heels that he can wrestle, or all these great baby faces, pardon me, that he can wrestle as the top heel. And instead, they didn't do that.
No, I kind of want to go back to '95 and just watch when I rewatch a year, I do the TV shows, the main TV shows, and the pay-per-views. So if I was to do WWE, it would be Raw Superstars Challenge, then the pay-per-views.
Challenge 95 was not a major show. Honestly, Challenge, because they, Challenge left a lot of the syndicated spots at the end of 94. But honestly, yeah, I get it though. It's but I've been the past while now, every Saturday morning or when I can, I make a habit of watching WWF Superstars from the 90s. And I just did New Year's Eve 1994. And the signs are already on the wall for how bad 95 is going to be. It was not just out of the blue. 95 was awful. They were setting that table at the end of 94.
Right. And the reason I said Challenge instead of Action Zone, because they use the same matches. I prefer the commentary of Gorilla and it was either Gorilla or JR or Doc Hendricks and JR.
Well, somehow we made the show go 90 minutes. Almost. So I've got I'm doing a lot of ranting this week. I haven't yet finished the Mid-South show where we reviewed yesterday, but the December 15th Mid-South show, my God, this was a show that just blowing my ever-loving fucking mind and not in a good way. Listen to yesterday's rant, ladies and gentlemen, because I bet it was a good one.
I'm pretty sure it will be.
So the last time TNA had the 2-week break, I decided that I was still going to watch it every week and just be 2 weeks ahead. And that is currently, and then of course I didn't end up doing it. I ended up watching, the next show like a few hours before we talked about it. But that is currently the plan that I'm going to, still watch a show a week. So this way I get 2 weeks ahead. So if I do end up getting tripped up, I'll at least be ahead. And with that said, I'm sure when we record our next show on January 4th, I'll be like, I was too busy watching the Tokyo Dome show to watch TNA tonight.
And I'll probably be like, that's fine. I was too busy working.
So anyway, that's going to do it for this week. Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Boxing Day, Happy New Year. Whatever it is you celebrate, if you celebrate anything, have a good that.
See you in 21 days.
Holla, holla, holla.